morning. My name is Stephanie Willoughby. I am the Youth Services Director at the Vicksburg District Library. And we are here today with Debbie Taylor, who wrote the children's picture book Over in Motown. And we've got lots of exciting questions for her today, and just super excited to hear how she wrote the book and inspiration and just a little bit more about herself. So welcome, Debbie.
Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to have an opportunity to share the book with you and to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Well, wonderful. Our first question is, how did you become a picture book author?
Well, I didn't really start out to be a picture book author, but I think the roots of it were actually in my childhood. I loved to read and I loved being read to. And when I was in college, I took classes that forced me to or gave me time to read and write. And I didn't become serious about becoming a picture book author until I was in my mid-30s, about 35 years ago. And I took a class at a community rec and ed building and joined a critique group. And that's where I really started indulging my interest in writing for children.
Yes. Oh, I love that. So you didn't always know you wanted to be a children's book author, or it just kind of grew over time?
I think I always wanted to write and tell stories, but I didn't know that it could be a career or a way to support myself. But I've always wanted to tell stories. Even as a child, I would write little stories, but I never knew that it could be something that could provide a living or be shared widely with other people.
Okay. So what do you think influenced you as becoming a writer when you were a child?
Oh, I think without a doubt, my mom. My mother was a great reader and she read stories to us all the time. She taught me to read when I was about 4. And once I could read, I read lots of things. I read books, family magazine stories. I read comic books. I even read the backs of cereal boxes. Thiamine, niacin, iron, Special K.
Right?
Read all the time. I also think listening to stories on the front porch and listening to radio stories. When I was younger, that was quite a thing, listening to stories that were read on the radio or storytelling on the radio. I think also I was influenced by movies. I was a huge fan, and still am, a fan of movie musicals.
Oh,
right. And I was always fond of the music, the dancing, and always the happy ending, the positive ending of a story. I was also influenced by my wonderful teachers and librarians who steered me to really good books.
Oh, yeah, that's their job, right?
Yes, and they did it quite well, very, very well.
Now, in my head, I can still hear my mom reading to me Ramona and Beezus. And I'm just wondering, like, what book do you think of the most when you remember your mom reading to you?
Yes, Over in the Meadow, which is the frame for Over in Motown.
Okay.
I remember her reading that to me, Over in the meadow, in the sand and the sun. With an old mother turtle and her little turtle one. Dig, said the mother, we dig, said the one. And they dug all day in the sand and the sun. I can hear it. I can feel her sitting next to me. Yes.
I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah. So like you, the same feeling.
I can see Jill over there. We were talking about that before we came on camera, that she remembered that song and was singing it a little bit to me from, using it for story time. So, oh my gosh, that's just wonderful.
Yes, yes. So a great influence, a wonderful influence.
Yeah. So both Over in Motown and your first book, Sweet Music in Harlem, are about musicians. So do you have a music background, and did you intentionally set out to write books about musicians, or did one just kind of naturally lead to the other?
Well, I don't. My musical background consists basically of watching movie musicals and trying to write and singing off key, in the shower. So I have no real music background, but I did and still do love to listen to all kinds of music. My daughters, who are now grown, did play instruments, the clarinet and the violin. And my husband is a jazz fan and a classical music fan, but I have no musical talent. I like to say that it skips a generation in my family. So, yeah. So
I love that. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, please finish.
I didn't really set out to write books that focused on music, and it just sort of evolved. I mentioned that my husband is a jazz fan, and he was actually wearing a T-shirt with the photograph in the book. He was wearing that T-shirt because he was a jazz fan. And I did ask him, well, who are these people in the photograph? And he could tell me the names of every single person, what the instrument they played, what type of music. He could tell me about who they collaborated with, but he didn't know who the children were. And that's what prompted me to write Sweet Music in Harlem. So that sort of led to that book directly. Yes. And the Over in Motown one was inspired by my love of Motown music. And the songs of the Jackson Five, Diana Ross and the Supremes, the Temptations, the Four Tops, and other musicians. I just loved listening to the music. Yes.
Oh my goodness. So are you from Michigan?
I'm from Columbus, Ohio.
You're from Columbus. Okay. Okay.
Yes. Born and raised in Columbus, Ohio, but that music of Motown just traveled across the area.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And it just kept us singing and dancing summer after summer after summer.
Oh, yeah. All right. So what do you hope young children and the people that read to them will take away from reading Over in Motown?
Well, I think like most writers, I hope that they will be engaged by the rhythm of the words, by the rhyme. I hope they'll also be inspired to look at those wonderful pictures that are created by Keisha Morris. I hope that they'll be engaged by what they see and what they feel when somebody reads to them or when they read it themselves. And also, since it's basically a counting book,
yes,
hoping that children are going to count the characters or the people or the objects in there. And hopefully that will encourage them to love math and that whole that whole thing. So I also hope that they will. I'm sorry.
Go
I also
ahead.
hope that they will think about exploring Motown music more. Very, very interesting. And there are a few words that might be unfamiliar with the students. Just the idea of a record.
Right.
Many are not going to know what a record is. We might. I think they might not ever have seen a record player.
Yes.
Yes, a record player. So I'm hoping at some point an older person or a librarian or teacher might bring in a record player to show them what a record player actually is. There are a few manufacturers of vinyl records that still exist, a couple in Detroit, but it'd be exciting for students to just explore that. So
I love that with picture books now, because you're finding more and more of them are even a little more nonfiction, and kind of the adults are learning, because yes, I know what a record player is, but a young mom in her, mid to late 20s might be like, a record player. Now, what would that be? And
yes.
I love when they take those, steps forward to try to learn more about the books that they're reading. So I think that'll be a great jumping off point with your book.
Good. I hope so. I also would really like for readers and people who read the book to children to think about writing their own versions of it. I mean, there's Over in the Forest, Over in the Ocean. There could be Over in Springfield, all right? Over in, over in other cities. I would love for readers and parents to work on their own version of this.
I absolutely love that. We're going to make sure we put that in our media, that, hey, write your own Over in story and share it with us. I think that's a wonderful idea.
Yes. My sister and I actually completed last year Over in Nashville.
Ooh.
She is a country music fan and country music singer, and she loves country music. So we collaborated to write Over in Nashville. So.
Awesome. Oh, I can't wait to see that.
Yeah.
So we've also read that you're involved with some national, regional, and local literacy projects. Do you have a favorite that you could tell us about?
Well, there are a couple. Our church has just installed a little free library.
Oh, wonderful.
Right. Have you seen those little free libraries in different communities?
Oh,
so
yes.
we installed one. And the main source of our books is an organization called First Book. And First Book, you're smiling.
Oh, we love First Book.
Yes. And they provide books at no cost or very, very discounted rates to various communities, schools, libraries, and so on. And most of our books are from First Book. So those are the two that I'm really involved in, Little Free Library and First Book. Really excellent organizations.
Oh, we love First Book. That's
yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
best way to give away books. I think that's a librarian's job, is to do that, is to give away books. So
isn't it exciting? It's wonderful. It's like feeding people. You're feeding their spirits, their minds, their hearts. So yes.
Absolutely agree to that.
Yeah.
You've had some stories published in children's literary magazines. So how is writing for magazines different than from writing your own books? And do you decide what you want to write about, or does the magazine request specific things?
Good questions. Well, many magazine stories are a little different from picture books. Magazine stories often sort of occur in one scene, in one setting. It can be sort of resolved in a very short time. Picture books might stretch out over a long day or a week or months or years, or in the case of A Cat in the Hat, a very long afternoon.
Well, there you go.
And a picture book relies on illustrations, many illustrations. Magazine stories may have 4 or 5 illustrations at the most. So that's sort of the difference between magazine stories and picture books. Those, it's still a little bit, wrinkly, I'd say. There are some magazines will have a call for submissions. They'll give you a list of magazine stories they're looking for. For example, Cricket Magazine has a call for magazine stories about ancient worlds and games. And they'll make that call about a year and a half before they want to publish it. So writers might look at those lists and say, okay, I have a story, or I'll write a story about games. Other times I just write a story and then I look for the
submission.
Exactly, look for where to submit it to. Yes.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
My favorite question to always ask is, what are you reading right now?
What am I reading right now? So right now I am reading a lot of picture books for younger children, because I'm reading every night to my grandson. So some of my favorites that I'm reading now, let's see, Raisin Dragons by Jardine Nolan. Dragons Love Tacos.
Oh, that's a good book.
Right. I'm reading poetry to my grandson as well. I'm also reading books by some of our Michigan authors. There's one called The Singer and the Scientist by our own Lisa Rose, about Marian Anderson and Einstein. So I'm reading lots of books for younger readers right now. Yes.
I love that. Oh, it's wonderful. So is there any advice you could give to kids that are aspiring to be authors?
Oh, yes. And I wrote it down because I don't forget anything. And that's actually one of the tips I have for young writers. Write it down, right? Get a notebook or note cards and write down your story ideas, and keep them someplace safe so that you don't lose them.
Right.
I would also encourage them to read all kinds of books, to read comic books, magazines, read award-winning books, read books that no one else has ever heard of, to just read, and read all kinds of books, everything from fairy tales to adventure stories, nonfiction, biographies. Read a lot, just read. I would also encourage young people to write the stories that interest you. If you are not interested in bananas, you may not want to write about bananas. Write about things that interest you and excite you, and write about things that you're curious about. Write about things that you have questions about and that you want to know more about. Dragons, volcanoes, knights, music, rockets, bugs, race cars. Write about what interests you and what you want to learn about. I wrote a book about basketball. Now, I'm not athletic at all. My family members are, but I was never a good basketball player, but I still wrote a book about basketball. It meant that I had to watch the people playing basketball. I had to pick up a ball occasionally. I had to do my research about basketball and basketball playing. And I came to find out that my stepdad was credited with being a person who who invented the jump shot. Now, there is some controversy about that, but we do have some but we do have some proof that he, decades and decades ago,
That's amazing.
there's a jump to make the jump shot. Yes, we have some actual evidence. So I encourage people to write about what they can do, what they can't do, what they're interested in, what they want to know about. Be observant. Look closely at the things around you, whether it's a person or an object or a flower or a bird or something you see on television or something right in front of you. I would also encourage people children to listen. Listen to those birds outside. And we have lots of this. Are there different sounds the birds are making? Is it different in the morning, in the evening? Listen to the dogs in your neighborhood. Who's barking? Why? All right. And write down some of your observations. Write down those things. Keep notes. Take writing classes if you can. If there are writing classes at the library or after school or in your community, take those writing classes because you'll be with other people who love words and who like to tell stories. Listen to the stories that your parents tell and your grandparents tell and your neighbors' grandparents tell. Listen to those stories. I think you'll just find out there are many interesting things that are happening to many interesting people. Everybody has good stories. So listen to those and even ask questions of your grandparents or great grandparents. They'll have interesting things to tell you about. Let's see. And I think also just share your stories with people who want to read them. Read them out loud to your dog or to your grandmother or to your librarian or to your friend. And as you start moving into a place where you're getting feedback on your stories, where people are saying, perhaps you should change that or add a character, or I'm not sure why that character blew out the candle. Make sure that you're open to getting some feedback. People who want to help you make your story better. And just enjoy it. Enjoy the writing. Enjoy the writing. I wanted people to know is that everybody who writes is a writer. They're all writers. You don't need to have a book published or a blog published to be a writer. You're writing on the computer, you're writing blogs, you're writing notes and cards. We are all writers. So let's continue to cultivate that and enjoy that and embrace that. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I can read maybe a couple of lines from
that would be perfect. That would be wonderful.
Over in Motown, the music soars from Detroit's skyline to the river shore. Car parts jangle and the church bell rings as the winter wind moans or the summer breeze sings. Under stage lights, glowing bright as the sun, a pianist plinks with her piano player one. Plink, said the pianist. I plink, said the one, and she plinked under lights, glowing bright as the sun. At the record pressing plant where the vinyl stacks grew, the lineman presses with his smart pressers too. Press, said the lineman, we press, said the two, and they pressed out the records where the vinyl stacks grew. And here's that vinyl record. Okay. Down on the sidewalk beneath the marquee, a smiling sister shimmies with her dancers three. Shimmy, said the dancer. We shimmy, said the three. And they shimmy, shimmy, bopped just below the marquee. And shimmying means like this sort of movement right there. Yes. Over at the nightclub on the waxed wood floor, a guitar player rocks with his string players four. Rock, said the player, we rock, said the four. And they rocked and they rolled on the waxed wood floor. They're playing that cool music. At Studio B, where it's humming like a hive, a tall singer hums with her backup singers five. Hum, said the singer, we hum, said the five. And they hummed sweet as honey, like bees in a hive. And there are five of these singers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Down in the band pit with his 2 maple sticks, a frantic drummer taps with his hot drummer 6. Tap, said the drummer, we tap, said the 6. And they tap, bang, a tapped with their maple sticks, making lots of noise. At the church choir loft, with his hands raised to heaven, the choir leader claps with his choir member 7. Clap, said the leader, we clap, said the 7. And they clap, clap, clapped with their hands raised to heaven. At the backstage curtain, in a line long and straight, the dance master twists with his limber dancers 8. Twist, said the master, we'll twist, said the 8. And they twist, twist, twisted in a line long and straight. And these people are doing a dance called the twist. They're not just twisting because they're making that movement. There was a big famous dance called, very popular, called the twist. Your parents and grandparents might know about that. At the auto plant floor on the car assembly line, the foreman welds with his glove welder's 9. Weld, said the foreman, we weld, said the 9. And they nodded as they welded on the car assembly line. Down on the corner at Van Dyke and Quinn, a drum major marches with her snappy marchers 10. March, said the major, we march, said the 10. And they marched in formation at Van Dyke and Quinn. Last page. Over in Motown, the music soars from the studio roof to the factory floor. There is singing in the streets and dancing down the halls, from when the first note rises until the last note falls. And in the back, there is a timeline that was developed by an expert at Motown. And it starts with the beginning of the Motown record label until it was sold in 1988. Thank you for letting me read that.
Thank you for doing that. That was wonderful.
My pleasure. I also had to do research for this book. I had to find an intersection in Detroit that rhymed with 10. So I found Van Dyke and Quinn.
Where is that?
Let's see. You know what? I'm not quite sure where in Detroit, but it's on the next to the last pages. But I had to do the research and look at all of the names of streets in Detroit that rhyme with 10 or Quinn.
Yeah.
And then find an intersection that would fit into the
rhythm. Yeah.
The rhythm, exactly. So that requires some research. It also required research to find out about records and how they were actually made.
Mm-hmm.
That was very exciting. It was a fun book to write.
A fun book to research too. My goodness.
Yes, it was. So.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for joining us and helping us. This was just a wonderful experience for me. And I know the families here in Kalamazoo and hopefully bigger part of Michigan too will see this and just absolutely love it as well.
I hope they do. And I hope it will inspire them to write either using that same format, that same structure, or to write something else. So thank you for all that you do.
Yeah. And thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. So I'm going to give you a big hand.
All right.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Read right. Bye-bye.
Yes.